Since the beginning of Battle Royale, Fortnite live events have been a very crucial part of the game and really have been for its entire history. Not only to set up what's coming next for the entire game and its gameplay, but also to bring the community together. And although they have been lacking on the community building, I think they still try a little bit and they're still doing better than Creative ever will.
Shut the fuck up.
But I think it mostly does a better job of just hyping up the next season, even when sometimes the season can't necessarily live up to the expectations we had off of the live event. But if you're someone who plays Fortnite consistently enough to know what a live event is, you can probably understand how important these are and also just how much we have of them. And I think you can really see an improvement over time where we've gone from just sitting there, kind of just jumping around, looking at what's happening, to actually being part of the whole live event, basically playing a mini game. But hey, maybe the chapter 1 events were just so astonishing and so crazy that the character could do nothing but stand there. So today I thought we go over some of the best live events we had in the entire game and understand what made them so great, because our last live event, then it wasn't really that good. Let's just be real. Maybe you liked it, I don't know, but for me it just felt like a huge ad. So let's just get into it. I'm gonna go down the list from best to least best because, like I said, I'm only putting the good ones on here. I could do a video on the worst ones, maybe later, but for starters, we have the Galactic Event, which I think is the greatest event we've ever had in the entirety of Fortnite. This was kind of the first playable event to a certain degree where you were actually in the event doing something and not standing there watching, crazy stuff happen, which you kind of were still watching stuff happen, but, you got to go in the battle plus and shoot down drones, which was really cool, and you got to fly around Galactus. I think this was a very good interactive event that was super engaging and had amazing visuals, which was really good for their first time kind of trying this style of an event. Obviously, we had the Travis Scott event that had kind of graphics like this, but that wasn't like you were in it. You were kind of watching it happen, which was still pretty crazy, but this kind of just one-upped that and really showed what they can do with their events. It was really cool to see all the Marvel characters come together and help you out where you're in the battle bus, especially Iron Man and Wolverine. The fact that all of them were working together, taking down Galactus, really gave a great end to this amazing season, in my opinion. It was really well paced and it had a good amount of time to it. I think like 8 to 15 is pretty good for a Fortnite live event. I think when you go under that, you're really just under delivering the season. They had a great use of music from one, just the original soundtrack they had for the Galactus event, and then two, that one rock song. I don't know what it is, but it was really getting you into it when, Tony Stark turned on the radio. It felt really cool. It was just a cool looking event. Everything about it really delivered on what this season already was, and it really just fit it super well. And then it had a great introduction of Agent Jonesy, which we already kind of got an introduction of him 2 seasons before this, but it was really cool to get in a continuation of his story, especially because he was going to be such a big part in the next season. But overall, this event just felt like a movie, and it really got you hyped for the next season, and this season did deliver on it too. There's some events on here that really hyped up their season, and the season did not deliver, but I can tell you season 5 definitely delivered for this event. But yeah, I really do think this season is a great example of a good event and what we want to have for any other events in the future. Now, the Collision event actually comes pretty close to the Galactus event in my opinion, because it did have the same kind of aspects that the Galactus event had. The way that all 4 of you were in the mecha power suit was really cool. It was a super good idea. One, because the final showdown is one of the most iconic Fortnite events for a lot of people, so it was cool that they brought it back. I think that was really well done. And I didn't mention this earlier, but both the Galactus event and the Collision event reminded me a lot of Star Fox and its gameplay. So the fact you were shooting tanks down and army people down, it really felt like a war, and that's what this season was, and I think they really delivered on that aspect. And even after you got out the mecha power suit, you were still going around shooting down mechs and fighting and really getting out of the area. And anytime they do this where they give you a gun and they want you to go around and shoot down either zombies, robots, whatever, bro, it really stands out to me because it doesn't just feel like I'm watching the event happen. I'm actually in the event, and it's like a mini game, and it's fun. It's not just Battle Royale anymore. It's a whole different game that I'm playing. And I gotta say, it still delivers on these goofy aspects of Fortnite, even in such a serious moment, and it does it kind of the same way the MCU does, and I think they did a really good job of executing it.
Keep your distance. Unless you want to go wherever that is.
Bro, yeah, I did want to go there. Like, I don't know why he's dissing it like that. And I think right after this event is where the storyline really started to fall off, sadly. I think the ending of this event with Jonesy and the Foundation was one of the best endings we've ever had for an entire event. Maybe the best. And even the Peely part between Jonesy and he's like, oh, I know a guy, and then Peely shows up. I thought that was really cool to develop Peely's character, because he is still a goofy character, but he is still pretty prominent in the lore even today. So I thought they delivered on the lore, not only in this season, but just in this event very well. So I gotta give it props for that too. But yeah, overall 10 out of 10 event, super close to the Galactus event, just a little bit under it, and in some ways it does overtake it in my opinion, but not mostly. The The end event in chapter 2 was also a pretty good competitor for the two I just mentioned, but it just wasn't all the way up there, but it was pretty close to them. I think it was very interactive, and they did the interactiveness very well. Especially when that villain came up and she was kind of just attacking everyone. I thought that was pretty cool. I don't really know who she was because I stopped paying attention to the lore at that time, but whatever. The fact that I got to run around the map and shoot down all these, things that were coming my way, and then eventually we would go into a base after the visitor would come save us, and then we would go down there and have to fight people down there. I thought that was really cool. But even before, we go down into the base, it was cool to have this one cutscene in the middle of it. I really liked how they started putting cutscenes between the events because although it is a live event, maybe this makes some people mad, I thought it's really well done because it really feels like an event. Like, it feels like a lot more is going on than it used to have. And then that end shot just felt so dramatic, the music and everything. And listen, I'm not gonna get emotional over a Fortnite event, but I definitely did get a little bit of goosebumps watching this. I'm not gonna lie. I gotta say, they executed it pretty well. Overall though, definitely another probably 9 out of 10 event, but maybe a 10 out of 10 to be honest, because I really did enjoy this event, even if the season kind of was a little lackluster. Now we have the Doomsday or Device event, whatever you really want to call it. Honestly, I find this event to be a masterpiece compared to a lot of the others because of the lore behind it. I think the lore is really well done here, and I know what I did say about past events being a little boring before this because you kind of just sat there and watched stuff happen and it wasn't really that interesting most of the times. But here I'll give it a pass because I think they did a really good job of delivering the lore of this season, especially in a season that was so good already. It's really a great standout for it. For one, the introduction of Agent Jonesy and like 3 different clips, or I think it was 4, is really, like, they do it really well. I think it's so cool to see this new animation that they were going for. It kind of reminded me of Hello Neighbor, which is a little funny. But other than that, it was just really well done how they introduced this character. Not only that though, the music cued perfectly with this event. The way that the device just shoves away the storm looks beautiful. I don't know why the visuals look so cool, but they do. It just looked really well articulated the way that they, executed it. Not only that though, the main part of this entire event was the fact that it got flooded. The map got flooded. And I think the best part of this event, or one of the best parts, is when you cut out of the map for a second to go back to Agent Jonesy's office, and then you cut back into the map, you open up your eyes and there's water surrounding you all over the place. Like, it's a huge water wall. I thought that was crazy. Like, it just looked really cool, and it perfectly cued with the music. Like I said, they did a really amazing job at cueing everything together and really showing off what they could do with this event. This event to me was honestly a masterpiece, I'm not gonna lie. They kind of cooked up hard here. It's crazy how good it was, especially for the time that it came out. It kind of was a big step up from what they were doing before, at least in my opinion. Obviously, the final showdown was pretty crazy, but this kind of just comes way above it in my opinion. Next up, we have the Zero Crisis event, and I'm so sad that this season didn't live up to how good this event was, because this event really hyped the season up. For starters, it introduced it with an amazing cutscene with Jonesy running around with all, the collabs that were entered through the game. He went around kidnapping each one of these people, and it was cool to see them all turn against him. It was kind of funny, but overall, it was just cool to see him dodge all of their attacks. Like, he was low-key dogging on them, bro, and these are the greatest hunters across galaxies, so how are you gonna get dogged on by some random 9-to-5 white guy? But, we soon learned that Jonesy is a lot more than what we thought he was. He's kind of crazy at what he does. But it was just cool to see this turnaround on him where he turns around his team because, he has to do the right thing. He calls the 7 to come save the Fortnite island once again, which I thought was really cool just to see this character development that he had. And I know we're talking about Fortnite characters, but I think it's still pretty interesting. But even the event itself, introducing the Foundation, was really well done. When he was comboing Jonesy, I don't know how the fuck he didn't die because he was getting hit hard there, but whatever. The actual playable part of the event had beautiful visuals. It did a really good job of introducing new mechanics and new things that were going to be in the game. It introduced the battle pass really well with having you, use each skin every time you did something. You had to go around sealing the 0 point, shatters. I don't know really what they were, but I just thought it was really well done. Although I do think the gameplay kind of lacked a little bit compared to the other seasons on here or other events on here. But I think the event more stood out for its lore, and I think it is probably one of the best lore-wise on here because of just how well it introduced each character and how well it developed their characters in general. Also, it had a really great end to it, and I'm just so sad the season horribly lived up to how good this event was, because this season just couldn't reach the standards that this event was at. Primal was just a dog shit season, but listen, you guys probably already know that I think that, so let's just move on. Next up is the Astro World event, which I thought was actually pretty good. It's the only music event I'm gonna put on here because I think it's the only really good music event we've had, other than the Ariana Grande one, which was okay. But I'm not even glazing because I don't really care for Travis Scott other than Rodeo. So just overall, this is a pretty hype concert, I'm not gonna lie, and it was really good in the pandemic where no one could go to concerts. I think they did it at a really perfect time. I don't know if they planned this or not, probably not though, because I think this would take a lot more time to get across, but it was pretty good. It was visually amazing, and this kind of pioneered this new style of event that Fortnite was going for with these very colorful bright lights, because I think that we were at this very cartoonish style of the new game with the new graphics, so they really wanted to show what they could do with their events now. I don't have much to say about it because it was just a concert event, but I think it was probably the best we've gotten, and they really haven't lived up to anything like this in the future, which kind of sucks. Next up, we got the final Showdown event, which is actually pretty good. I didn't really like most of Chapter 1 events because you kind of just sat there and watched it happen. Sometimes you'd be moving around, but usually they were very small kind of events that just happened in the middle of a game. But I thought the final Showdown event was really well done because you could just watch these two, giant robot and giant monster fight each other. And it was cool, the lore behind it with the 7 coming down. And I think this really introduced a big part of the lore because a lot of Chapter 1, the lore was kind of just there, but it wasn't really like a big part of the game. And it became a big part in Chapter 2, and I think this is where it really started to pick up, in my opinion. But even just visually, the animation looks great. It really does look like they're fighting, and it was pretty emotional for some people. Not emotional, but I don't know, dramatic, I guess you could say, because they were kind of just going down at each other, and you don't know who was going to win. They were tearing each other apart, but at the end of the day, Mecha Team Leader did succeed, because, Mecha Team Leader is the GOAT, especially after he disrespected the monster like that. Like, listen, I understand you won, and you want to celebrate, but hitting him with a one-hand floss, that's just disrespectful. Like, come on. I gotta put the season up there just because Season 9 was such a great season. I think this is probably my favorite Chapter 1 season in general, especially for this event. So, yeah, and I know a lot of people think that's kind of a hot take, but I do think it is the best. And this really is still one of the most iconic events to this day. So, yeah, I did really enjoy it. I don't think it's the greatest event that we've gotten, but probably the best of Chapter 1, I would say. Lastly, for the list of the best, I have Operation Skyfire, which is nearing the disappointing list, and I'll tell you the reason in a second. But first, I think this event is very good for its visuals. I think the visuals really stand out here, and I think definitely show an improvement to previous events. Not only that, though, I think the lore is delivered really well too, and I think all of these coming together do a really good job at ending this season off, but also, leading into the next season with Kevin the Cube and everything. I think the ending of it was perfect. I think it's one of the best endings we've got for an event. But I think the main part that really brings this event down for me is the gameplay. I feel like the gameplay felt like a huge step back, especially after Galactus and even Zero Crisis Finale, which both had you interacting with a lot more, parts of the event than this one did. Most of this event's gameplay is just running around, and it still is cool. It still is cool lore-wise, it still is cool visually, but I think that this gameplay isn't really standing out to me. It wasn't really memorable, and I had a hard time remembering what you really do in this event other than the ending. Other than that, though, I really do like this event. I think it's great. I really do understand why people love it so much. It's just, for me personally, the gameplay does not stand out to me, and that's a big part of these events, obviously, like I've said throughout this video, so that's the only reason it's at the bottom of the list. Next up, I got Big Bang. This was more of a disappointing event for me because it felt like an ad for all the new game modes. It didn't really show off anything for Battle Royale or its lore, which was kind of annoying. One, the Eminem stuff was way too short, and I don't even really care for Eminem, but it just felt too short. I better see Tyler in this game soon. I'm going to start throwing hands, and he better not be a festival pass. I want an actual event for him. But back on topic, the rest of it, the race car shit, and even the Lego stuff, it was cool to see, but nothing really was happening. There was no lore, there was nothing going on. It was just an ad, basically. I guess the coolest part was them traveling through the galaxies, but even that wasn't very interactive, and it was more that you were just watching it. And lastly, I have Fractured. I don't even really think I have to explain myself here. I've said this in a previous video, but this entire event just felt like a point-and-click adventure game. Literally, it felt like putt-putt the entire way through. I was just running around, doing stupid tasks, and it just felt like I was doing a side quest the entire way through, which is not how a finale event should feel, at least in my opinion. But it was Chapter 3, which I think is probably the worst here, so this event definitely adds on to that, but whatever. The one thing I can give this event is that it did have really good visuals, probably the best out of the 3 that I just mentioned, but other than that, it just lacked so hard. Nothing was really happening here. It was cool to bring the island together, I guess, but I didn't really care for this bullshit. I was kind of already done with this chapter, and this event really just stapled that in. Looking back on these events, I think what really makes an event, at least for me, is the gameplay. I think you need to make an event memorable, and the gameplay is a very important part of that because it is a video game. So when you have people go in and actually use their controller or use their keyboard to actually do stuff around around the event, I think that really adds on to it. I think another thing that adds on to it is obviously the visual and then the story. A story is a very important part of these events, and obviously not all of them are story based, but I think a lot of them are, and they need to deliver that story well. And a lot of these events, or at least the newer ones, aren't really doing that too well. But it seems like Epic is cooking up with their next event. Chapter 5 Season 2 is going to be crazy. The lore is already looking really good, so I'm happy they're picking themselves back up. I thought Chapter 4 was amazing. It was really overhated, but its lore was awful. So I think that they can do pretty well with this, especially with the event, but we'll see. But all this yapping about events is really making me realize I gotta go touch some grass. I need to have my own event, so let's go try that. Yeah, this shit's ass. I'm going back inside.